top secret U.S. military and government biological testing on everyday American people and our cities. Welcome back to the Patriot Rising. We are the Resistance. In today's video, we will be discussing an operation when the American government willingly tested biological weaponry on the American people without our consent or knowledge. This will be a video series here on the channel because, let's face it, the government has performed many such tests on the American people and we can't cover it all in one video. Do us a solid and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell icon, and share out our videos. We must wake the sheep, the people who believe the government is here to help. Now let's get into the video. The St. Joe Program and Operation LAC. After World War II, a Special Operations Division was created at Camp Detrick, now Fort Detrick, to carry out vulnerability field tests against biological weapons. In response to an Air Force request, in 1953, the Chemical Corps created the St. Joe Program, and operatives staged mock anthrax attacks on St. Louis, Minneapolis, and Winnipeg. The bacteria Bacillus globigii were released from generators placed on top of cars, and local governments were told that invisible smokescreen were being deployed to mask the city on enemy radar. The next stage was to increase dispersal patterns, dispensing particles from airplanes to find out how wide of an area they would affect. The first large area concept experiment involved dispersing microorganisms over a swath from South Dakota to Minnesota. Operation LAC was undertaken in 1957 and 1958 by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps. The operation involved spraying large areas with zinc-cadmium sulfide. The U.S. Air Force loaned the Army AC-119, known as the Flying Boxcar, and it was used to disperse the materials by the ton in the atmosphere over the United States. The first test occurred on December 2, 1957, along a path from South Dakota to International Falls, Minnesota. The tests were designed to determine the dispersion and geographic range of biological or chemical agents. Stations on the ground tracked the fluorescent zinc-cadmium sulfide particles. During the first test and subsequently, much of the material dispersed ended up being carried by winds into Canada. However, as was the case in the first test, particles were detected up to 1,200 miles away from their drop point. A typical flight line covering 400 miles would release 5,000 pounds of zinc-cadmium sulfide, and in fiscal year 1958, around 100 hours were spent in flight for the operation. That flight time included 4 runs of various lengths, one of which was 1,400 miles. Further tests covered areas from Ohio to Texas and Michigan to Kansas. In the Army's words, these experiments proved the feasibility of covering large areas of the country with biological weapons agents. Airports and subways. Serratia marcescens bacteria. Open-air testing continued through the 1960s, with the Special Operations Division operatives simulating even more audacious assaults. In 1965, they spread bacteria throughout Washington's National Airport. A year later, agents dropped light bulbs filled with organisms onto the tracks in New York's subway system. "I think it spread pretty good," participant Wally Panyer later said, "because you had a natural aerosol developed every few minutes from every train that went past." On September 26, 1950, the crew of a U.S. Navy minesweeper ship spent 6 days spraying Serratia marcescens into the air about 2 miles off the northern California coast. The project was called Operation Sea Spray, and its aim was to determine the susceptibility of a big city like San Francisco to a bioweapon attack by terrorists. In the following days, the military took samples at 43 sites to track the bacteria's spread, and found that it had quickly infested not only the city but surrounding suburbs as well. During the test, residents of these areas would have inhaled millions of bacterial spores. Clearly, their test showed San Francisco and cities with similar size and topography could face germ warfare threats. At the time, the U.S. military thought that Serratia couldn't harm humans. The bacteria was mostly known for the red spots it produced on infested foods and had not been widely linked to clinical conditions. That changed when 1 week after the test, 11 local residents checked into a Stanford University hospital complaining of urinary tract infections. Upon testing their pee, doctors noticed that the pathogen had a red hue. Infection with Serratia was so rare that the outbreak was extensively investigated by the university to identify the origins of this scarlet letter bug. After scientists identified the microbe, The cases collectively became the first recorded outbreak of serratia marcescens. One patient, a man named Edward Nevin, who was recovering from prostate surgery, died, and some have suggested that the release forever changed the area's microbial ecology. Relatives of Edward Nevin, who had died of a nosocomial infection 6 months after the San Francisco tests, sued the government in 1981, arguing that the supposedly harmless serratia marcescens bacteria used in that test had in fact caused his death. In the event, the courts ruled against them, the main reason being that the plaintiffs could not prove that the bacteria used in the test were the same as those that killed Mr. Nevin. In the 1950s, U.S. Army researchers dispersed serratia marcescens in open-air tests over Panama City, Florida, and other U.S. locations. These classified experiments were part of a broader program to test the military's vulnerability to biological warfare. The tests were conducted without the knowledge or consent of the public. The Panama City experiment was one of 239 secret open-air biological tests conducted by the military between 1949 and 1969. Other cities where serratia or other simulants were released include San Francisco, New York City, and Key West. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a small example of what the U.S. government will do to the American people in the name of nation defense. President Nixon's 1969 termination of the United States offensive biological weapons program brought an end to the open-air testing, but the American public did not learn of this testing until 1977. Our government does not see us as the American people. They see us as revenue and guinea pigs. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so not to miss upcoming videos on the secret testing our government willingly performed on the American people. Thanks again for watching. We are the Patriot Rising. We are the resistance. Stay safe and stay prepared.